Welcome back to Pain Free for Life, where we share how to successfully overcome all kinds of chronic and extreme conditions to live happy, productive, pain-free lives forever. And now, here's your host, co-founder, and board-certified holistic healthcare practitioner, Dr. Rob Vanbergen.
Hello, and welcome back to the Pain Free for Life podcast. I am Dr. Rob Vanbergen, and today I'm running solo. And I'm going to switch hats a little bit and talk about the issues of sustainability and how they ultimately impact our health. I'm even going to talk about some of my own realizations this past year and what that has led to. It's important to note that while I do not sit here championing the issues of sustainability, soil erosion, food security all the time, and while microcurrent therapy is my main focus, these things are not lost on me. I know what is going on in the world. I'm seeing it all around, and I may just keep a lot of that more personally to my chest because a lot of people just want to hear about microcurrent therapy, energy medicine, and things like that. Now, as I said, switching hats today, talking about this topic because I do think it's very important and it's become increasingly near and dear to my heart. One of the key ingredients to a healthy us is actually the soil that's beneath our feet, right? The earth itself lets out energetic vibrations that are vital for cell functionality. Small organisms within it make it so that simply sticking your hands in the soil can serve as an antidepressant by increasing serotonin production. And it provides, of course, nutrition for everything we grow, and by extension, pretty much everything that we consume in the world. Now, although it may not look like much, this dirty substance, soil, is full of water, it's full of nutrients and microorganisms that are vital for growing our food. But one thing that we often overlook is that soil is actually a finite resource. Restoring even a few centimeters of soil can take up to 1,000 years. So if we want to ensure food security and improve nutrition in the future, we need to take care of our soil today. And in the grand scheme of the world, the landscape, governments, this is probably going to have to come down to individuals doing their own part in it. So despite the need for soil and despite the apparent abundance of it, I mean, I look outside and there's just a sprawling landscape behind me of just weeds and grass past my property line, right? So it looks like there is a lot there. But despite that, what if I told you that the equivalent of one soccer pitch, or for those American football fans, 2 football fields of soil is eroded every 5 seconds? That's crazy. When I read that statistic, I was floored. It is safe to say that one of the major threats to soil and our food security is erosion. This refers to the removal of topsoil by water, wind, or unsustainable agricultural activities, such as intensively tilling the soil, or as I like to call it, cheesily enough, big pharma. A little bit of a joke there. I'll get a laugh out of that. Some soil erosion is natural. It occurs under all climatic conditions on all continents. But much of the soil erosion that we see that is damaging the world is driven by these unsustainable human activities. Overgrazing, intensive agriculture, deforestation, these things increase the rate of soil erosion by up to 1,000 times what it would be naturally. To me, another desperate attempt for an industry to chase a dollar rather than feed the world. In North America, Americans waste 46% of fruits and vegetables, 35% of seafood, 21% of meat, and 17% of dairy products. Altogether, Americans waste between 30 and 40% of the total supplied food that is grown and created in the US, or in some cases, even imported into it. Now, Canada's not better. In fact, we're worse. With all of the resources that Canada has, massively. We have massive financial resources and massive natural landscapes. Our food waste problem shouldn't be anywhere near as big as it is. But 60% of the food we produce in Canada is thrown out every year. A third of that, so 20% of the total overall food surplus in Canada, is edible at the time it's tossed away. So it's not even rotted down, right? Yet land continues to be cleared. It continues to be scaled to increase profits and prices. And these things continue to climb in grocery stores to compensate not only for loss of these resources that are wasted, but for the cost of clearing the landscape and destroying the soil in the process. Accelerated soil erosion really can have disastrous consequences for all of us. And it's easy to push the buck into the future and say, well, it's not going to be a big deal. But if we don't act now, I think statistically over 90% of the Earth's soils could become seriously degraded by 2050. So 25 years away. Now, there are a few issues that personally affect us and directly impact our health in the short term as well as the long term. And I'm not sitting up here advocating for the world to change. I am not a disillusioned person in that way. I don't believe it will. I believe that in the grand scheme of things, governments will run things the way they want to run them, and there's very little we can do. So I believe that a lot of this comes down to looking at ourselves personally and what we can achieve for ourselves, for our families, for our loved ones, for our friends. So number one, soil erosion inhibits our ability to grow nutritious food. And this should be the big normal thing that everyone does. How much money do people spend and waste on supplements every year? Supplements they need because the natural nutrients of the food that they eat are not enough. It's tons. It's so much money wasted in that way. So by decreasing the nutrients available to plants, as well as the space for them to put down roots, soil erosion can decrease the yields of crops by up to 50%. So how do you counteract that if you're a big farmer? Well, you clear more land. Let's just double the space and we'll get the same crop yield as we would have before the soil was eroded. Now, in addition, crops that do grow tend to be lower quality. They're misshapen, not really a big deal, but they're smaller and less nutritious. This low quality produce has effects not only on the farmers who try to sell it, but also on the people who will consume fewer nutrients by eating it and therefore have to supplement just to survive. The second thing is that soil erosion leads to general ecosystem degradation. Soil erosion is the removal of topsoil, which is the most fertile layer on the soil. It causes minerals and nutrients in the soil to deposit elsewhere, often degrading the traditional ecosystems. In addition, the sediment can build up in reservoirs or head into rivers and streams and deprive people of resources and energy. You know, we know that we're having across North America, places are starting to have rolling blackouts. Well, power, especially hydropower, which is very, very common here on the West Coast where we are, is something that can be affected by soil erosion as well. And lastly, and certainly not least, soil erosion affects water supplies. We need clean drinking water to live. We need water for our cells to function, for the microcurrent systems of our body to function. Soil captures, stores, and filters water. So when soil erodes, less water can move through it. So without soil, the drinking water quality just takes a nosedive, especially in those lowland areas. And this is because the water has never been adequately filtered through soil upstream. Additionally, with less soil to absorb the heavy rainfalls that come, floods become more frequent and intense, and they destroy our local food sources. So what we are getting locally that may be healthy, that may be organically grown, is in jeopardy as well. So where am I going with this? Well, this all loops back to show that these things that the masses often overlook can contribute massively to health dysfunction. Poor water, poor nutrition, and by extension for those meat eaters among us, poor nutrition from the animals that conversely rely on the plants to grow and thrive. So it's all cyclical. It doesn't matter really what your diet is, it's going to be impacted here. resources that we need and rely on are being depleted everywhere. So in order to ensure our best health, we have to look to what we can do to actually bolster our lifeblood, right? The soil is a really good place to start, but it's fascinating to see how the world has an answer for everything. And it's all symbiotic. The things that consume, the only things that seem to take more than we give are humans. Uh, maybe that's just the fault of us. I don't know. Now, COVID, and we'll cycle back, COVID, the pandemic, all of that happened there, whatever, however you believe it, no one can deny that it highlighted a loss of resources. And limited resources and supply chain issues. Here in Canada, it was pretty evident. I wasn't sure how much it affected the US, but having talked to some friends and colleagues in the US, it seems that it hit you guys just as hard as well. And things didn't really go back to what they were before. So while things were rarer and rarer in grocery stores, it didn't really hit me until this past year when we're still having shortages. And when you do get things, they're far more expensive. I was going to the store for just a few simple items here. I wanted some blueberries, I wanted a head of lettuce, and a carton of eggs. And the whole process of this, albeit I was going to a fairly expensive grocery store in comparison, I paid $26 for those 3 items. $26 for the privilege of some blueberries, a lettuce, and eggs. Now, this really clicked with me. I was pretty livid, actually. I remember coming home and complaining to my wife about how ridiculous it was that things that before would have cost less than $10 had tripled in just a year, especially the idea that this head of lettuce could be by itself like $4.50. I mean, vegetarianism is supposed to be fairly affordable. That was at least one of the things that people always used to talk about. So I realized then in that moment that I was not only overpaying for food that used to be or about 30% of what it was now, but I began to question the concept of grocery store organic. And I know this is not a new concept by any stretch. I'm just sharing my personal experience with it. The idea was it really healthy? The organic carrots sitting next to the factory farmed pesticide covered carrots on the same shelf, right? Even in the same area, was it healthy? Or was I paying more for the same thing that sat on the shelf next to the other thing that had no functional difference in the moment of being harvested? So where did I go from here? Well, I started with 2 berry bushes, the goal to maybe get some blueberries that weren't going to be so expensive. A fun kind of why not moment in the garden center, which I used to honestly only go to just to look at things. And now it's become kind of a second home to me. But that's kind of where it all began. And suddenly within about 3 weeks of this, I had access to fresh berries every day. But bear in mind, this was the middle of the summer. It was like late June when I started. Obviously I know that it's not plant and harvest right away. But that kind of spurred something within me. And quickly I got curious. And with obviously my wife on board, I extended this to other foods as well. Lettuce, tomatoes, potatoes, spinach, beans, and beyond. And before I knew it, my ridiculous $250 a week grocery bill had shrunk to $70 a week, which was still a lot compared to how it had been years before, but it was definitely a big difference. And I realized then I was certainly on to something. In decades past, we didn't rely on the unreliable and currently scarce food system, right, that we do now. People had gardens. People raised their own food. They lived healthy lives with the respect for the things they were eating, and they took care of their parcel of land that then in turn took care of them. Now, moreover here, health-wise, health issues that I had known as normal began to clear up. Those of you who have been around for a while will remember me discussing my allergies to vegetables and fruits that were raw. And I've gone on about this for years and years because it's always something people push vegetables and fruits and you eat them. And if you have an allergy to them, you can't fit into any dietary spectrum. But regardless, I was surprised and maybe should not have been surprised. And you may or may not be surprised to hear that my own grown fruits and vegetables do not cause any allergic reaction, the same way that organic grocery store food does. And the things that I could not eat, I suddenly could. Suddenly, I could enjoy salads. I could take fruit and vegetables right out of the ground and eat them. And that before would have set me off. I would have this allergic reaction, almost anaphylactic. And because of that, I began to become more open to new foods as a result. And I was able to start eating with the seasons, and I would do that. And I still do. I take the things that are growing, and that's what we eat. And honestly, I was absolutely hooked. And I knew that I'm not the first to do this. By far and away, this has been going on for a long time. And I would hazard a guess that many of you listening right now have been doing this for a long time as well. I knew that I had to do everything I could in this moment to not only save money, because that was a pretty big driving factor, but to grow my own food with the only inputs being what I put into it. So I set out on a quest, and my house, for context, sits on a very small piece of land, 1/12 of an acre, and 50% of that is a front yard that my homeowners association says must remain simple grass, evergreen plants, and a single tree. So very, very limited. They say I can't have any animals outside of my actual house. Even our cats have to stay in the house. My house and property must remain visually attractive. And for those of you listening and not watching this, I air quoted that because, how do you even define that, right? So in my town, you literally cannot get more restrictive than where I live. It is the worst. And even as you get into the rural areas of this town, it's pretty bad as well. So what did I do? I started with this small balcony garden, much to people's dismay, converted my balcony, my front balcony, into a vegetable garden. I got some quails for my garage, and I built raised beds out in the back to optimize my growing space. A few rabbits in the backyard convert weeds to manure, and that goes straight back into the garden, and it keeps the soil healthy even as it grows food. And I can tell you that in less than 8 months of doing this, I've lost weight. My allergies are virtually non-existent, and I feel dramatically healthier as well. And the crazy thing is when I first started doing this, people thought I was crazy. My friends who knew me as a homebody person that stayed inside and worked, were like, why are you doing this? Is it really worth it? What are you gaining for it? And it was just so much work, and they couldn't see it. They didn't see the invisible changes. They didn't see the allergy reduction. They didn't see those changes. And really, the satisfaction of being involved in the process of what you eat is amazing. It's truly amazing. And knowing that what I eat is healthy, that it's well cared for, that it's optimized for nutritional value, not for cleanliness, attractiveness, or chemical makeup, right? These things make it worth it. Moreover, we pick what we want to eat when we want to eat it. So waste is virtually non-existent. And I tell you this to let you know that even with the smallest amount of land, even if you think you are extremely limited, my office right now, aside from this section, the rest of my office is essentially a greenhouse. It's got little seedlings and things like that growing within it. So even with the smallest amount of land, even with a small balcony, you have the capacity to start to take control of your health and your nutrition. 1/10 of an acre of land can yield 6,000 pounds of food a year. All of it organic. The average American needs less than 2,000 pounds a year of food to live healthy, happy, nutritiously. So you may be able to feed yourself far, far more than you think. Now, this all happened to me last year, and I was not prepared. I started in midsummer, not the spring. Now, as of this year, I, on my tiny little space, grow/raise 70% of what my family consumes, and my monthly grocery bill has shifted from over $1,200 a month to $200 a month. More importantly, I'm healthier for it. I feel better. What does this mean? Well, pursue alternatives, right? Look at what you have and realize that in even the smallest space, you could do something that's going to improve your health, save yourself money, and give yourself the satisfaction of growing your own food. Bear in mind the mental health benefits of getting your hands dirty in the soil. Keep in mind the fact that the earth itself is making you healthier on a cellular level. It's improving your microcurrent system. It's neutralizing electromagnetic fields. It's doing all of the good. And then the bonus is you get to eat for free from it. In the last 100 years, we have shifted from self-reliance to reliance on what our government and the media tells us to do. They may say it's unsafe to raise your own food, to preserve your own food, that it's a waste of time, that it's not worth it. But here's the truth, right? Your health is worth everything. Even if you can reduce your reliance on others by 10%, 20% or more, you're making strides to a healthier you, to a healthier family. You know what you put into what you grow, into what you raise. You know that it hasn't been pumped full of chemicals. It hasn't been sprayed with fertilizers and pesticides. It is the optimum purity of health. The inputs are safe and they are nutritious. And you can care for your own soil, right? If everyone did this, if all of us did this, we wouldn't need to destroy the soil. We wouldn't need to worry about soil erosion. We would be able to just grow things and barter and trade. I found even that a huge community of people willing to barter and trade different products and allow people to focus on small growth, sustainability, right? It's huge. There really is a lot of people doing this, a lot of people behind this. What I'm saying is, realize that no matter where you live, what your health condition is, what you believe, you have the capacity to make lasting and important changes for your health and your wellness. And chances are, as a bonus, you're going to save that money, right? Things are going to be good there. Now, I am sure that many people listening already do similar things. I'm curious. I want to know, what do you grow? What do you raise? What do you preserve? How long have you been doing it for? Any long-standing ancestral tips from grandparents past to share with me and others, realizing what can be gained from self-reliance? Do let us know. I'd love to hear about it. Now, this has been a little bit more of a rant of an episode than normal, but I do think it's an important one. And I feel like even if one or two people take away from this that they can improve their health and all around while doing this, then it's going to have been worth it, because there is so much we can do to improve our health. And once you get it started, the effort really is fairly minimal. So that being said, I'm Dr. Rob Vanbergen, and I hope to share more of this journey that I've just recently discovered as I continue to learn more about it. But I want to encourage you all to stay curious, to keep learning. I think that we are lifelong learners, that there's a lot to do, and there's a lot that we should be considering here. So do all of this, look into it, tell me what you think, and I'll hopefully see you all next week for another episode of the Pain Free for Life podcast. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Pain Free for Life. Be sure to follow us, share the show with family and friends, and leave us a review on iTunes. Every time you share the show, you are helping someone take their life back from pain. Visit painfreeforlife.com for more resources, including our free guides to microcurrent, the Hache protocol and inflammation, as well as our blog and online community full of people just like you, successfully overcoming all kinds of chronic and extreme conditions to live happy, productive, pain-free lives forever. And stay tuned for the next episode of Pain Free for Life.